Now, I've interviewed you a few times. I know how excited you've been about the prospect of a Labour government. What do you make of how Keir Starmer's done so far?
I'd say very well. It's barely 3 weeks since we went to the polls. We've seen a string of announcements. Labour have moved very fast and very boldly, I would say, unbanning onshore wind straight away, easing the path for some big solar projects as well, banning bee-killing pesticides. That's been an issue for too long in our country, and a raft of other things. The announcement of GB Energy and Energy Independence Bill. I mean, it's a long list for less than 3 weeks already in government.
You mentioned GB Energy, which is obviously a big part of their green agenda. Do you think they're putting enough money into it to really make a difference?
At this stage, I would say yes, because the focus is on offshore wind. We've seen that with the announcement today, teaming up with Crown Estates. Very sensible move. They own the seabed, and normally they will rent the seabed to developers that then pursue planning permission and take quite a lot of risk, and it adds to the cost of the energy that ends up coming from offshore windmills. What Labour are planning to do now is to take projects through the planning process and actually capture the value in that step for the public. And I hope go further, actually build the projects ourselves as a nation and own them. And that's a brilliant move. This is how we get to have the real benefits from our natural resources, the wind and the sun, in fact, and keep them for our country for, well, in perpetuity, actually. So but the big money will be needed once we've got planning permission, just to come back to the point. Then we need many billions of pounds. But government have pledged 8 billion this parliament. And if that was used with debt the way we do in the private sector, then it would be possible to raise 70 or 80 billion in total to spend on offshore wind farms, using just the 8 billion of seed money from the government.
Now, there's one thing that I wanted to get your perspective on, because I know this is something that you'll have thought about quite a lot. You know, Labour wants economic growth, but there are some environmentalists who think that growth is not necessarily a good thing for the environment, that, you know, since the Industrial Revolution, it's actually been tied to bad outcomes for the environment, you know, increased climate change, environmental degradation. What's your own view on the pursuit of economic growth?
I think we've had several industrial revolutions, actually, and this is the latest one that we're kind of, it's underway, I would say. And they've all lifted an immense amount of people out of poverty. Yes, there have been bad impacts that have come with it too, but this industrial revolution can put right the problems of the previous ones, the climate crisis and stuff like that. I also think we can get social justice this way. We can become a sustainable country, but we've got to build this green transition. It won't just appear itself. And so we do have to have all of the activities that will lead to economic growth to get to 100% green on the grids, gas and electricity, and a more sustainable nation this year.
I guess,
by way of example,
I guess that the thing I'm trying to get to on economic growth is there are clearly things that Labour's doing that would help growth and help the environment, and I absolutely take your point about lifting people out of poverty, the social impact as well. But if you are making your number one priority the pursuit of growth, which it feels to me like Labour is doing right now, then some of the things appear to be growth first and the environment second. You know, changing the nutrient neutrality rules so developers can start building houses that risk polluting rivers, reviewing the green belt, housing targets in general. You know, are you comfortable with all these things?
I haven't seen the nutrient neutrality one. I am comfortable that we change rules to enable more house building, because we have a real crisis in our country, a shortage of houses, incredibly high prices, you know, people waiting to be in their 30s before they can get on the housing ladder and stuff like that, and a lot of homeless people. We don't have a shortage of land, and only 15% of our entire country is built on environment. So, you know, there's no problem there. So I'm keen on that one. I think the growth that Labour overall are pursuing is green growth, and I think that's a good thing. We need it anyway. It's how we get the jobs and fight the climate crisis all at the same time. That's a wonderful combination. But it is important that houses are built in a way that doesn't impact the local environment.
I mean, you're the sort of big, environmental crusader. Here you are talking about, actually growth can be a good thing, that house building is a good thing. Have you gone a bit soft?
No, I've always cared about the housing market. It's so wrong. And the private rented sector is a crime, actually, that it's not regulated. You know, the people in the private rented sector live in incredible, what would you call it, housing poverty. You know, we used to talk about mortgage poverty, where people spend a lot of their income on their mortgage, but at least they're buying a piece of their own house. In the private sector, it's worse, and they're not buying anything, just a roof over their head for a temporary period of time. So, you know, there is a real problem in our country with a lack of house building, and green growth through building, green energy, for example, is so good for us. You know, twice as many jobs, twice the GDP growth for every pound we spend on green energy versus fossil fuels. So from my point of view, it's not a difficult choice at all. We should pursue the green economic opportunity and create for ourselves a sustainable country.
One big prickly decision that gets to the heart of this that could be coming up for the government is Heathrow, whether or not there should be a third runway at Heathrow. What's your view on that?
Is it third or fourth?
Maybe it's fourth.
You could.
I thought it was third. Maybe it is fourth.
I don't know. You might be right.
Check my notes.
You're probably right. You must know. Maybe, anyway, well, I'll just answer the question as if you're right, because I'm sure you are.
I think it is third.
Third, yeah, great. But I'm looking forward to seeing Boris Johnson laying down in front of the bulldozers if Keir Starmer does give consent to the third runway. But more seriously, I don't think it should happen. I don't think that we need to expand the aviation sector in our country. 50% of people in our country never fly. It's a false narrative that we need more runways and more planes so that people can have cheap holidays, because most of the flights are taken by just 10% of people in our country. And there are other ways to do business. We've learned that obviously through the pandemic with video calls and stuff like that, like we're having now. So I'm against runway airport expansion, actually.
And then just finally, I want to talk to you about Just Stop Oil, because we obviously saw some members of Just Stop Oil being given some pretty hefty jail sentences for protesting, including the founder, Roger Hallam, given 5 years. Now, this is going to split viewers. Some people will think that's ludicrous because, there were non-violent protests. There'll be others who think, people missed ambulance appointments. People missed huge saying goodbye to their, loved ones who were dying. And actually, it is right to send a message to people who will keep offending otherwise. What's your own view on it?
Well, the things you described there, I think, were things that happened during lockdown in the pandemic. I wasn't aware that they happened when, the M25 was disrupted for a short period of time. But look, my view is this: 5 years for taking part in a Zoom call to talk about disrupting the M25. That's what Roger Hallam got. I think that's exceptionally bad. I have to ask myself, where do we live? Is it Russia or North Korea or somewhere like that? If this sentence had been handed down in Russia, our politicians would be quick to criticize it. It is overly harsh, and it was legislation brought in by the Tory administration just before they lost the last election. I think something should be done. The law should be changed. It should be repealed, and the sentences should be reviewed. It's incredible. If you commit GBH in our country, you won't get 5 years probably in prison.
Thank you very much indeed. Always good to have you on the programme, Dale Vince there. Thank you.